This is the video to cover the lesson that's titled Reference Angles. There we go. At the top here, it says an angle is formed by rotating the terminal side of an angle, the desired magnitude, which means just like the degrees or radians. Once an angle is graphed, you can use it to find coterminal angles. Coterminal angles are angles that all share a terminal side. Highlight that for you there. And that just means they end in the same spot. And define blank angles. The other kind of angle we're going to talk about today is called a reference angle. A reference angle is an acute angle. Acute means less than 90 degrees. That is between the blank and the blank side of an angle. It's going to be between the x-axis, so it's finding the distance between the x-axis and your terminal side. Because it's finding a distance, it's always going to be positive. And I've drawn some pictures, well, drawn with the computer at least, down below here. I'm going to go through and highlight the reference angle in each of these situations. So for quadrant 1, the reference angle is right here below the terminal side and above the positive x-axis. For quadrant 2, it's over here below the terminal side and above the negative x-axis. For quadrant 3, it's over here below the negative x-axis, but still above your terminal side. And then over here on quadrant 4, it is the same as the quadrant 3, that it's above a terminal side and below, this time, the positive x-axis. And then if you wanted to label these just to help yourself out, I'm going to label them in degrees. And then we can always convert to radians if necessary. Actually, let me label, let's just do this single, we did in class was just the quadrant, my bad. Here, that's 180. Quadrant 3 is 180 to 270. And then quadrant 4 is 270 to 360. And then right here, this little spot at the bottom, it's just basically what I already said out loud. In quadrant 1, the angle is blank to its reference angle. As you can see, they're actually the same angle here for quadrant 1. This is our angle, and this is our reference angle. So they're going to be equivalent. That just means the same. In quadrant 2, it says in quadrant 2, the reference angle is blank, the angle and the negative x-axis. It's between. Looking at quadrant 3, in quadrant 3, the reference is blank the negative x-axis. So as you can see, it's below the negative x-axis. And blank the terminal side, it is above the terminal side. And then, like I said before, quadrant 4 is very similar. Quadrant 4 says the reference angle is blank the angle, that would be above the angle, and below the positive x-axis that time. And there we go. So here's our pictures. And then over here at the top of the next page, I have some little shortcutted equations to help you figure out what the amounts are. Long story, easy story, short. We're just looking for the distance between our angle and the x-axis, no matter which side of the x-axis that it's on. Here it says tip. If it's easier to find the reference angle, if you first find the coterminal angle of your angle, if it's not already on the unit circle. So let's look at a few of these. We'll do a couple that are on the unit circle, then you can try a couple, and we'll go back and forth from there. You can draw a picture if you want. You do not have to. Pictures are optional for this type of angle. I just personally like to draw the picture because I think it's a little easier to understand. So I am going to draw the picture. Again, it's optional. Looking at example number 1, it says, what is the reference angle for 70 degrees? Another way to say that is, how far away is 70 degrees from the x-axis? So I'm going to draw a picture. And I already have marked here for you. It's in quadrant 1. I know this is 90, and that's 0. So 70 would be somewhere in the vicinity of this. And that means this would be our reference angle, that distance from 0, or the x-axis, to 70. I also, if you look over here, can see here that it says quadrant 1, the reference angle is equal to the coterminal angle, which in this case is just a plane angle, obviously. So reference is 70 degrees. And that's the answer. Let's try number 2. Number 2 says, what is the reference angle for 280 degrees? It's in quadrant 4. So I'm going to draw my coordinate plane. Here are the numbers for quadrant 4. And 280 would be just past that 270, probably like right there. And that means that this distance here is the reference angle, because it's the distance from my angle, which ended right here, until the x-axis. So I want this part here. The way to find that, let's look over here at our shortcut at quadrant 4, is to do 360, which is one full rotation, minus our angle. And you just type that in the calculator, and you would get that our reference angle is 80 degrees. Okay, let's do one more, and then you can try a few. What is the reference angle for 140 degrees? It is in quadrant 2. So I'm going to draw quadrant 2. It's from 90 to 180. Here's my starting side. And 140 is probably like there, like halfway-ish. A little less than halfway, or actually a little more than halfway. That means here is my reference angle. I want the distance between this terminal side here and the x-axis. This time it's the negative x-axis. And I can see that here. According to my paper, quadrant 2, 180 minus the coterminal angle. Remember, coterminal just means it ends in the same spot as our angle. Minus 140, and that would be 40 degrees. And there you go. Good, okay. So ignore 4, 5, and 6 for a second. Those are a little harder. Go over to the next page, and you're going to do 7 and 10. And then when you're done, go ahead and unpause to come back and check your answers. Welcome back. Here's number 7 and number 10. Number 7 was in quadrant 1, and because it was in quadrant 1, its reference angle is the same as its actual angle, so it's 85 degrees. And then number 10 was in quadrant 2. I know that because 129 is between 90 and 180. And if I went ahead and plugged that one into this little equation up here, it says 180 minus the coterm, and that's how I got 51 degrees. And there you go. Let's go back to this previous page. Let's try number 4, and then you can try the next couple that aren't on the unit circle. So number 4 says, what is the reference angle for negative 10 degrees? This is not on the unit circle. Our unit circle is from positive 0 to 360. What we're going to do is find a coterminal angle by adding a rotation, because they're currently too small because we're negative. And that'll give us the size of the angle that's on the unit circle that would be in the same spot when it ends as negative 10. And that would be 350 degrees. I'm going to draw a picture for this one. And I'm here in quadrant 4 between 270 and 360. As I'm sure you can tell, 350 is really close to 360. So we're going to get real close in there. There we go. And then this little sliver, that's the reference angle. And according to our notes, if we're in quadrant 4, we do 360 minus the coterm. So 360 minus the coterm, and you get 10 degrees. That's our reference angle. Just a reminder, reference angles are the distance between the end of your angle and the x-axis. Good. Go ahead and try 5 and 6. You can also do 8 and 9 while you're at it, and then come back when you're ready to check it. Go ahead and check 5 and 6. You should have gotten 60 degrees for 5 and 0 degrees, or you could say none for number 6. And then number 8, back up, there you go. 8 and 9. 8 was at negative 480. That is way too small. So we added rotations until we got to a positive number, and that positive number was 240, which has a reference angle of 60 degrees. And then number 9 was at 467. That's way too big. So we subtracted the rotation until we got to a positive number between 0 and 360. We got 107. That is in quadrant 2. According to the shortcut at the top, I do 180 minus quadrant 2, and that will end us up with, 73 degrees. The last thing we have left here is 11 and 12. I left these two because they have slightly different directions. It says up here, for 11 and 12, also find three other just three other angles, not acute, with the common reference angle, one per quadrant. And back here, let's do this one together. Then you can try number 12. I want to find all the angles on the unit circle that have a common reference angle. Common means the same. So they have the same reference angle, meaning they end the same distance away from the x-axis as each other. I first want to figure out what quadrant we're in. 315 is quadrant 4. And according to the top, 360 minus our coterm, 360 minus 315 is 45 degrees. So I'm looking for 4 angles total. I already have one of them. 3 more angles that have a reference angle of 45 degrees. The easiest way to do it is to graph it. I know for a fact I have an angle that is right here. There we go. This is 315 because it has a reference angle of 45 degrees. Now, I know we haven't gone over the unit circle yet, but it is very, very pattern-based, meaning whatever happens in this one also happens right across and right across this way. So I'm just going to reflect that over the axis. There we go. This also has a reference angle of 45 degrees. And now I just want to know what angle is it. If it's in quadrant 1, then according to our shortcut up here, it is the same thing as the angle. So if our reference angle is 45 degrees, our actual angle is also 45 degrees. Now let's mirror to horizontal, be like this. I want this angle here because it has a reference angle of 45 degrees. So I want to know what angle in quadrant 2, I almost said 3. What angle in quadrant 2, there we go, put my labels on there, is going to have a reference angle of 45 degrees. Looking here in quadrant 2, it says 180 minus the coterm. If you just swap that and do 180 minus the reference, it'll give you the coterm. So 180 minus the reference of 45 would end up being 135. And then we do the same thing for the last one. This still 45 degrees. Now I know I'm in quadrant 3 now. According to quadrant 3's little rule up there at the top, we're supposed to go all the way and then just subtract 180 from our angle to get the reference angle. Because we already have the reference angle, we're just going to go backwards. Instead of subtracting, we would just add them together, and that'll give us the entire angle, which is 225. And there you go. This will really help us build the unit circle next time. Remember, common means the same. Reference angle is the distance from the x-axis. So every quadrant, quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4, all has a certain angle that's going to be the same distance. Go ahead and try number 12, and then come back when you're ready. Here is our picture. Go ahead and check. In quadrant 1, we had angle 78. In quadrant 2, we had angle 102. In quadrant 3, we had angle 258. That was what we were given. And then in quadrant 4, we had angle 282. And that, my friends, is all she wrote. Good luck. See you later. Bye.